It's time to talk Gonzaga basketball.
Get ready.
It's the Spokesman-Review Zags Insiders Podcast.
Here we go.
Here's Jim Meehan and Richard Fox.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome back to the Zags Basketball Insiders Podcast. I'm Jim Meehan with the Spokesman-Review, cover Gonzaga basketball. My sidekick, Richard Fox, analyst on TV broadcasts for Gonzaga on KHQ, SWX, and Root. And we're back after an interesting week in Zagville. But first, we'll get to that in a minute. The Zags went 1-1 with the win over Mississippi Valley State, a loss to UConn in Seattle. But let's get caught up on the rankings, the net, all those things. The AP poll just came out, Foxy, and Zags dropped 5 spots to 15th. Purdue, which knocked off Arizona, and Tommy Lloyd regained the top spot in the poll. UConn stayed at 5th, about what you'd expect, dropping 5 spots after losing not a neutral court necessarily. I guess technically it is, but probably 16,000 Zag fans there for Friday's game in Seattle. In the net, Gonzaga is at 36. They are now 0-3 against Quad 1 teams, and they're still looking for that marquee win. And they're not getting a lot of help from the people they've played against and beaten. USC's in the mid-80s, UCLA's 120. Both those guys lost here in the last couple of days. Washington is in the 59-60 range, and Yale is up to 143 after the Zags beat Yale in the season opener. You've got USF 56th. You've got St. Mary's at 80th. So the WCC is not going to provide a lot of Quad 1 opportunities unless things change. Foxy, the Zags are going to have to take care of some things on their own or get some help elsewhere to maybe improve that Quad 1 record.
Yeah, and UW barely beat Seattle U in double overtime. Yeah, look, it's the opportunities are dwindling. You know, San Diego State on your home floor, which I would imagine will be a nice change of pace for this group, just to be able to play in front of their fans against somebody who's worth talking about. And then obviously the Kentucky game looms pretty large later in the year. And you know, we've said this throughout the season. I think we've both been consistent with the idea that this group is a group that's going to grow throughout the year. I don't think either one of us thought this was a finished product coming into the season. And clearly they're going through some growing pains now. It'll be interesting to see, you know, even if they're not getting the best tests in the WCC leading up to that Kentucky game, you'd like to think that they're improving and hopefully kind of solidifying how they want to play. And hopefully some of these guys are starting to shoot the ball a little better and have a little bit more confidence.
Yeah, that game's going to be really interesting because you got 2 teams. The Zags are kind of mixing and matching transfers and new guys, and a couple of freshmen are playing. And Kentucky's got a lot of freshmen playing, so you would think they'd have a growth potential too. And by February, they'll have been through a round of SEC play. So I think both teams might be closing in on their best basketball when that Feb 10 game comes around. Let's go back through last week. First, the good, if you want to call it that, the Zags played Mississippi Valley State. Team was literally the last ranked team in the net, I think at 362 coming in. And it was about what you might expect in a game like that. The Zags 3 bigs kind of led them in scoring, had a size advantage, and the Delta Devils were pretty much offensively challenged, which I think they came in averaging under 50 points. And that's what we saw for 40 minutes.
Yeah, that's a really bad basketball team, and Gonzaga, you know, handled them the way that you'd expect them to. You know, I think we were hoping to see kind of it being a get-right game where you'd see Gonzaga start making some shots. That was not the case. You know, the 3-point struggles continued, and then obviously carried over when they went back to Seattle. Really a rough 7-8 days from the 3-point line.
Yeah, that is the one missing element there. You kind of hope some guys would find that stroke again, and didn't happen in that game. Did not happen in the next game. And let's move on to UConn. Well, first off, UConn is outstanding. They are on both sides of the ball, very good, elite, and they aren't the same as last year's UConn team that rolled Gonzaga in the Elite Eight and went on to win the title, I think, every game by at least 13, 15 points. They're a little different makeup, but they are an absolute handful on both ends of the floor. They can beat you offensively. They can beat you defensively. They can beat you with a three ball. They can beat you with penetration. But they do so many things right. My theory, just as it was, 9 months ago, that's a bad matchup for Gonzaga. That is a team with that's a bad matchup for most people. They don't have many holes. Purdue is a better matchup for Gonzaga, in my opinion, just because maybe don't have as much patience as UConn does on the offensive end. I mean, there'd be times the Zags were guarding them for 15, 18, 20 seconds, didn't look like anything was going anywhere, and they'd slip a screen and layup, or they'd, make one dribble penetration kick and an open three. I don't think Purdue has quite the ammunition that UConn does, but that matchup for Gonzaga, that doesn't fit very well, does it?
No, I think the word that comes to mind for me is they're a little bit more creative than Purdue, more spontaneous. You're right. I mean, they've got an exceptional system. Hurley's clearly an exceptional coach. I mean, they've got an identity as a program, how they want to play, regardless of who's there. But a lot of those slips, curls, back cuts, that's just a player reading the defense rather, and making a play. And then they've got the personnel to play with that freedom. And quite frankly, this is kind of how Gonzaga has done it for a long time. I mean, Mark's offensive system is very free-flowing, a lot of creativity. Guys have a lot of discretion on the offensive end to just make plays. Certainly there's structure behind all of it for both teams. But look, UConn's a different class than Gonzaga right now. They're just a better team. They've got 8 guys in the rotation. Certainly they lean heavily on their starting backcourt, but they've got guys coming in who, fill their role. The one thing that struck me, Jim, is UConn's not searching for solutions. They understand who they are. Every guy in the rotation understands his role, and Hurley's not trying to figure it out. He knows what he has. And then on the flip side, watching Gonzaga and the staff trying to figure out, what do we do here? We're trying to figure this out. We've got 3 backcourt players and 4 guys on the front line. How do we make this work? And it was just evident that they're a different class right now. And I think we're starting to see that as we get 10, 12 games into the season. I think there's certainly parity, and on the right night, Gonzaga could certainly beat UConn. But you look at the top end of the standings, and it's UConn, Purdue, Arizona, Kansas. I've seen Houston play a couple times. Yeah. They are what they are. They will defend you like crazy and find ways to score. They've had some injuries here recently that might make that a more uphill climb for them. And then I think you've got a fairly sizable drop to the Marquettes of the world and Kentucky's of the world, but still all very good teams, but maybe just not playing at the same level those other teams are. I think that was just evident for GU. This is a team that's looking to figure out how to make this work with some of the depth issues they have and some of the struggles that they have, particularly offensively. And that's a UConn team that's got it figured out. And is, the other takeaway I had, Jim, was that's a UConn team that's going to be a whole lot better when they get to March. They're still searching, I think, for that 5th guy. It looks, they started Ball, the freshman, who didn't do much but could play, knew how to be, function out there. But that Castle kid is the real deal. Yeah. I mean, he's a pro, and he's coming off injury, or I think he'd be starting. If he can grow into a lottery level talent by the time they get to March, I mean, their starting 5 may be as good as anybody in the country. Yeah,
no question. And the other kid who hurt the Zags, Diarra, off the bench, was very good. The big kid they bring in for Klingon is more active, long, leaner. mean, Klingon he's a man child out there. He's 7'2", 280. And he had not scored the ball like that most of the year. He, kind of had some 8-point, 10-point, 12-point. He had one game, I think, with 29, but he was good around the rim. He pinned EK on the low block, 3 or 4 times at the outset. And once that happened, they did the kick out and wide open threes. They kind of reminded, Mark Few said after the game, they reminded him of the 2017 Zags with all that size, the ability to defend. Guys knew their roles, good at both ends of the floor, no weakness either end, which I think is true. They don't have the overall size the Zags had with Shemek and J3 and all those guys, but they're in the neighborhood for sure. But what they reminded me of Gonzaga's offense in the heyday years. They, if the first thing wasn't there, they had counters. They had, they were running cross screens, down screens. They were running ball screens. They did post up. They had Newton go off the bounce. Their shooters got open in interesting ways. That's Spencer on one play. It looked like a broken play, and he's kind of stuck in the middle of the key. And then just one screen later, boom, he gets out to the wing. I think Anton was late. Maybe it was Dusty. I'm not sure, but it was late covering him up, and that kid hits everything. When they're not going to score because they don't run in transition a ton, so they're maybe not going to score 95 or so a night, but they're going to put a whole lot of 75 to 85s with highly efficient shooting percentages. They get good looks almost every time down the floor, and that's what the Zags have always done in their heyday, inside out. That's what it reminded me of.
I think you're spot on, Jim. They're a lot of fun to watch. All 5 guys are generally doing something on the offensive end. It's rare to see a guy just standing, on the perimeter on the low block. It's interesting with Klingon. Obviously, EK had a struggled immediately, and I don't know if Mark touched on it after the game, and if he did, I'd be interested to hear what he might have said. But he obviously was not happy with the effort Graham gave, early in that game. And oddly enough, I think Edey's a better matchup for EK because Edey's much more of a static player. He doesn't move around as much. It's they get him. They're very patient offensively. They get him on the low block, and it's very much pound the ball. And I'm either going to my right hand jump hook or I'm spinning off that contact. And he's very good on the offensive glass, but he's not a very mobile guy. Klingon is. I mean, he moves. I mean, they put it when Edey sets a high ball screen, it's very much to get the ball handler open, and he kind of methodically moves his way down to the low block. I mean, he dives. They can throw it over the top, and he'll finish. On the low block, he's a little bit more fluid than Edey. He'll spin off of you. He makes quicker decisions, and EK's 6'8", 6'9". 260, let's say 250. He's given up size, length, height. I mean, that's a very difficult matchup, and clearly Gonzaga, I think, was hoping that he could hold his own against Klingon, but just that just wasn't the case. And you're right, he hasn't been a big time scorer for them, and you couple how good they are, plus they get that production from him, and it's not just the offense. I mean, it was efficient, but he had 3 assists, a couple blocks, a steal. You saw his impact defensively. That doesn't even account for the shots he deters or alters that we don't capture in a stat sheet. So, look, a really good team. I love their guards, Newton and Spencer in particular. They never felt like they were out of control. Just played at their own pace, very comfortable. Never really forced a shot, and just really efficient. 50% from the field, 5-11 from 3, 7 assists, only 3 turnovers, and they got 4 steals. It's just kind of workmanlike. They
do it at both ends. That's what they're not one-trick ponies. They're not just a 3-ball shooter. Spencer. They chased him off the line finally in the second half in the corner. I think Dusty ran him off the line. takes one bounce, comes in, kind of hits a drifting 12-footer. Tough shot. Swish. I mean, they do a lot of things well. Their shooters can still bounce it. They can guard. They have good size. I just think that team, I think they would beat Purdue head up. It'd be a hell of a game, but I think they just have got depth. And by the end of the year, those freshmen, Castle and Ball, they've got some guys. They're coming.
And Jalen Stewart off the bench, local kid that hasn't played for them. Local kid meaning from Seattle, but a talented kid too. But what struck me is they just need their freshmen to be freshmen. Both guys played 18 minutes. Ball, don't hurt us. Make a play if it's available to you, but just play within yourself. And Castle's obviously got top end talent, and he's coming back from injury, but he was just I think 3 of 9 from the field, but you saw his talent level. He's going to grow into a 25, 30-minute a game guy. But they just need them to be freshmen that are figuring it out. They don't need them to win. Gonzaga desperately needs Stromer and Huff to win that type of game. And, both Huff and Stromer are clearly really nice pieces. And there's parts of their game that lead you to believe that down the road, they're going to be really impactful and part of winning at a really high level. But I also don't think we haven't seen a lot to indicate that they're ready for that today. Yeah. Stromer was better. There's no doubt statistically 8 points, 6 rebounds, 4 of those offensive, which I thought was really impressive. 3 of 6 from the field, but continue to struggle from 3, 0 of 2. And then Huff, I love what he does. I love, he's very unique, but against the Power 5, he's over 60% of his shots are coming from 3. He's clearly not comfortable yet with the speed, the length, and overall athleticism of these Power 5 players. And then you couple that when you play these really good teams, all these guys have all that, plus they're really good. And it's been a difficult kind of transition for Huff. He's gonna ball out Wednesday night. I'm sorry, it begs the question, what does that actually mean? I don't know if it means much. Is that helping him build confidence when they go play San Diego State, who isn't a top end team, but they're going to have those types of athletes, physical. They really need him to have more of an impact in some of those games. And UConn's got really good freshmen, but they just need them to be freshmen. Gonzaga has solid freshmen, and we need them to be really special, and that's not happening right now.
Yeah, the night kind of got off to an ominous start. Luka Krajinovic actually broke his hand in the shoot-around, which is hard to do. Those are non-contact deals most of the time. I don't know what happened. I think he ran into a teammate, but he's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. So the guard depth gets even smaller. Not that he probably would have played in that game, but just another body they don't have, especially with a game tomorrow or Wednesday night, I guess it is. That'd be a game where he would play and have a chance, but just bad luck right out of the gate.
I was going to say, I can't remember a stretch for Gonzaga that's been more unlucky. I'm sure you have people come chat with you and say, especially when they lose a few games or don't play well, it's, is this the end of the program? And, this guy's on fire. But the constant thing I get is, what's going on with the roster? The roster construction, this, that, or the other. And I'm like, look, they had it all dialed in, and then you think about the domino effect. You had the kid from Australia decide not to come over. He's starting for the Sydney Kings. He might have started over Venters. I'm not sure. He's really good. All of 6'7", kind of a wing. You get Marcus Adams, who just doesn't work, but top end talented kid. He's not even here for a minute.
About Marcus Adams.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'm not sure he was going to be an impact guy, but he was 6'8", an athlete. They clearly were thinking about depth, taking a chance. Then you get Venters gets hurt. He clearly was going to be your starter. Probably would have helped cure some of these 3-point shooting issues we've seen. And then Hunter Salas. I'm not sure all those 3 names are all in play if he stays, but he's sure shooting the ball pretty well down at Wake. So you have all of these dominoes, that these unfortunate or just things outside of, I think, the staff's control. And then you land where you are, which is you've got 3 backcourt players. Now you lose Luka, who I don't think anybody expected him to all of a sudden break out and be a major piece this year, but he certainly wasn't, break in case of emergency kind of guy. Now he's gone. I can imagine the staff is just like, what do we got to do here? But and I know this isn't on our list, but I was wondering about it, and I wanted to hear what you thought. Doesn't it make sense to contemplate starting Greg and bringing Stromer off the bench, or even if you want to keep Greg off the bench, bringing in June and just balancing your rotation? Stromer's still going to give you 25, 30 minutes a night, but just having a ball handler, a playmaker, a proper perimeter player coming off your bench, does that help solve any of these depth issues, or at least balance out the imbalance? I mean, I know that I'm not articulating as well as you would, but does that make any sense?
Well, I think you're almost to a point where why not give it a shot? I mean, and that's no knock on Dusty at all. I think Dusty has exceeded what I thought he would do in a lot of cases. He's a pretty good defender.
Yeah, I agree.
He's a very good intuitive rebounder. You see it on the offensive glass. He finds those little seams. He doesn't give up on a play. And I still think he's a good shooter. He just doesn't have his confidence right now. I think that will come for him eventually. But they're kind of in a spot where, I mean, why not take another look at how things might work that way? I mean, you mentioned last week something I thought they could do, maybe not against UConn. I'm not sure that would have worked, but the 3 big lineup, obviously with Benny and Huff, I think is your best combination with either EK or Watson, whatever. But the 3 ball that those guys bring, they're sorely missing that right now, and the guards aren't giving it to them.
No.
So I think it's probably worth a shot. And you got to remember, those 3 balls are all from the bigs right now. The makes, the ones over 40% are 3 bigs. And Nolan's like in the mid 30s. He's the best of the guard lines. So, yeah, there's probably some things I'm sure they're kicking around, but the injuries, Caden Perry's another one who got hurt.
Yeah.
Never came back. That was months ago, but that was another guy that they kind of thought they had and didn't. So there was a lot of late changes and adds. That's why you saw Luka come on board late. That's why you saw Pavle Stasic came in. Those were to replace guys who had just gone elsewhere or transferred or left the program. So, yeah, they've got limited options, but I think whatever ones they have, they might want to take a look at them a little longer because right now when they're playing the top tier teams, there's a gap there. And I'm not sure they have the personnel to make it up, but they got to try some different things. Let's go ahead. Real quick thought on the next SWAC opponent for the Zags. That's Jackson State, the 3rd one of the year. I actually watched a little of them last night. They're on ESPNU playing in Vegas and looked quite a bit better than the other 2 SWAC teams GU has played. This team was picked to win that conference. They're pretty athletic. They have some size. Not maybe size in the post. They have a decent kid there, but they have some 6'6", 6'7", 6'5" bodies. They've played a couple of WCC teams. They got thumped by LMU and they got thumped by San Diego, but I think it will be a little more competitive of a game. This team's in the mid 250s in the net. Those other teams were in the low, mid to low 300s. I think this team has a better collection of athletes. Look like they have some guys who can score on their own. I think it won't be the walkover Gonzaga had against the other 2.
Well, I hope so. I just think you've got to get something out of these home games. And, if you want to throw in Cal State Bakersfield, into the mix with the SWAC teams, it just hasn't been real tough sledding on your home floor this year. And, you don't want to follow up UConn by playing Kansas. I'm not, we love that, but certainly you want to have the opportunity to win games without necessarily the stress of needing to win that, that anxiety. But at the same time, I think you want to get something out of them. And I'm open to missing the obvious, but I'm not sure you got a lot out of the last 3 home games. So I'd hope for a stiffer test. I think you get better as a player when you play with things, under stress, when you've got to deal with anxiety of the importance of getting a stop, making a shot, even if it's just for a half or the first 15 minutes of the half. But when I forget who they play when they're up 30-4. I'm not sure that's all that helpful, for what you're trying to do over the course of a year. So I haven't looked at them yet. I'll have that game on Wednesday. I certainly will be hoping for it to be somewhat competitive.
Yeah, I think it will be. Let's do a couple of general topics real quick and get out of here. Let's get after the 3-point shooting. They lose Steele Venters. That was kind of their designated 3-ball guy at the wing before the season starts, but he tears his ACL. As I mentioned, the top 3-ball guys are Huff, Greg, and Anton. And EK is, I think, 4th. So that's kind of the inverse of what we're used to of Gonzaga rosters. But got Nolan, and then Nemhard. Dusty has struggled a little bit there. June as well. I mean, is this something they're going to have to live with? I mean, this number, I think they're at 32.3 on the year. I'll have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure they haven't been under 36, 37 in a long, long time. And, that's one of the things beyond being able to operate inside out, which they could not do the other day. The 3-ball is not happening for them this year. And I don't know if they have the ability to flip it dramatically. I do believe they're better than what they're putting up right now. Do you see this changing, or is this just going to be, hey, if we hit 33%, that's about what we are the rest of the way?
Well, you proposed this topic, and I thought, well, let's look at this. And so I took a really generous point of view, and I said, if I took out the Purdue game and the last 3 games where they're shooting 27% or 12 of 44, on the year they're shooting just under 37%.
Yeah, which is what they need.
To be fair, I didn't back out their best shooting game either, but they are not this poor shooting the ball collectively. I don't believe that to be true. Stromer shot 37% in high school. He's obviously shooting sub 30 right now. He just does not seem comfortable on the 3-point line. You made a comment earlier. I just think he's in his head a little bit when it comes to that part of his game. I did think it was a good response from him against UConn. He was active on the glass and attacking the rim and so on and so forth. But he's going to shoot a better percentage. EK is obviously a really small sample size, but Watson's percentage has gotten better every year. Mm-hmm. And Huff and Greg can shoot it. They need Nemhard to get going. He was not a great 3-point shooter while at Creighton. I think low 30s, but he's certainly better than 19% from the 3-point line. It's funny that the further up the food chain you go in basketball, in other words, from the grade school level, call it, all the way to professional, coaching has less and less of an impact on how you perform on the floor. As you get to the professional levels, I mean, you're more often than not, it's a peer relationship with your coach. The age gap is less. The perspective, the life circumstances are the same. You've got families. This is a job, and certainly at the college level, the impact of a coach and the coaching staff is still really meaningful. But at the end of the day, I can't make a shot for you. You as the player have to knock them down. It'd be one thing if you and I were chatting today about, boy, they just can't get shots. Their offense, it's just really hard for them to get good looks, and they've got to do something. We're not sitting here, Monday morning quarterbacking the game plan against UConn. They got good looks. I mean, and I mean, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but the quality of the jump shots and the 3-point shots they got, I thought generally were good. At the end of the day, it's on you as a guy to go make those shots. And that's where Ryan needs to get. He just, and that could be, mentally he's got to get right, or it's time in the gym, but he's going to play. I mean, in all these big games, he's playing 40 minutes and he's getting opportunities. And the more he struggles, the more of those opportunities are going to get from 3-point line. He just has to step up and knock those down. And he's certainly better than 19% from the 3-point line, but until he starts knocking them down, I just think teams are going to increasingly play off of him and really play him for the pass and the drive.
Yeah, no, and that if they're doing that on the 3 perimeters, what's that mean for the guys inside? That inside, outside approach, the pass to the interior is not near as easy when they're in the gap already.
Well, and it's not just it's not just delivering the ball in the low block, but now doubling becomes a lot less painful. I can double off my guards. I can close out short. I can just congest cutting and driving, and it just really it contracts the floor for you offensively. And it's startling to see for a Gonzaga team. To your point earlier, I mean, I don't remember a team that struggled this much from the 3-point line to start a year. It's one thing. I mean, we've had teams certainly that have had stretches where there's just a lid on the rim, but I mean, we're 11 games in, right? You're starting to worry. Is this part of the DNA?
Yeah. Let's touch on one real quick here, Foxy, if we can, and get out. Assist to turnover ratio. Gonzaga against UConn, 5 assists on 23 buckets, 11 turnovers, their worst of the year. They've had 5 of 11 games with more turnovers than assists, which is another thing you just do not see from a Gonzaga team. Now, 4 of those were just by 1. It was, 11 and 12 or 8 and 9, whatever it was. But on the season, they have 36 more assists than turnovers. And I went through, and like you did with the 3-ball, I went through and did some math on the assist turnovers. You take out the NAIA team, Eastern Oregon, you're down to plus 24. If you take out the 2 SWAC teams, you're minus 2 on the year. Unheard of.
Well, I took it a step further. If you take out Cal State Bakersfield, they're minus 3.
Well, good work there, Foxy. What's the solution, I guess, is what the Zags are looking for. But and I think some of that could change simply by knocking down shots.
I was just going to say,
talked about. I mean, you get 3 or 4 more assists if you're shooting 38% from the 3. So I think that's one category that could change. But is that another thing the Zags just going to have to live with? They're usually one of the top assist teams in the country, take care of the ball. Is this just life as we know it right now for Gonzaga?
Well, I think you're spot on. If they start making jump shots, I think that number is going to improve. I think at times we've talked about this now since the beginning of the year. For Nembhard, I think sometimes he becomes enamored with like the home run play. That the dime, right through the window, perfect pass.
The highlight play, yeah.
Yeah, where just the simple play is what they want him to do. And he'll have stretches where he does that, and then all of a sudden he'll make a play or with the ball, or there was a great interesting play with just under 5 minutes in the second half. I mean, still, you thought, well, if Gonzaga can get a few stops and make some threes, maybe this gets interesting. Gonzaga, UConn turns it over, and Ryan goes coast to coast and misses a layup. I think that's a bit emblematic of maybe his decision making with the ball. That wasn't a turnover necessarily, but just trying too hard to be the guy to fix it. When I just think if he just makes the simple play over and over and over again, the percentages are going to go up. His numbers are going to get better. They're going to be better. And then, it looks, sometimes I watch Hickman and Stromer with the ball, and there's a looseness with it. Like, just, they don't understand the impact of a turnover. in the way that Mark would like. I mean, I can't tell how many games how many games we've called this year, how many times they've had a turnover where it's been a lazy pass over the top, or just a lazy, swinging the ball to the top of the key and a defender gets their hand on it, turnover, and his reaction is just like out of body. I mean, because it's not that those turnovers at home are going to cost you the game, but Mark understands those turnovers against a good team cost you the game. And I just don't think they're not valuing it, prioritizing the ball in the same way that they should. And so I just think collectively, I mean, their bigs have largely been pretty good with it. It's a lot of responsibility. You have the balls, you play as much as you play, and you have the ball as much as you do. You need to take care of the ball. And I think for Ryan, it's just, I love how he can play in fifth gear. He's got to put it into third a little bit. Just change the pace, slow it down. And then for Hickman and Stromer, it's, guys, we can't afford these unforced errors. So again, a lot like the shooting, Jim, at some point it's on you as a guy. I can talk until I'm blue in the face as a coach. I can show you all the tape in the world of your mistakes, or even when you make the right play and try to reinforce that. But until you as a player make better decisions and get better, we're going to struggle. And it's just interesting. This is the first year I can remember in a long time, I'm sure there have been others, where the levers Mark can pull or the buttons he can push are very, very limited.
Yeah.
So they need the guys that they have to be better. Yeah,
that's getting back to what we talked about. They are who they are at this point. There's no mid-season addition coming. They got 7, maybe 8 bodies to work with. So we'll see if they can get it fixed and get up and running like the Zag teams we're used to seeing. That's going to do it on this Monday. I'll post this here in a few, probably a couple hours. We are doing a little change up for the holidays. Zags play Wednesday, then they're off till the 29th, I believe, against San Diego State. So we're going to tape the following Wednesday after Christmas, and the next show will be, I think, the 3rd maybe of January instead of on New Year's Day. So next Wednesday for the next show. Everybody have a great holiday out there. Make sure you tune in to the Zags Basketball Insiders podcast. Thanks, Foxy. We'll catch you Wednesday night at the game. Happy holidays to everybody, and we'll see you next time.